Welcome back to Streamline Entertainment. It is Marvin speaking. We're just going to go into something that I just read about, which was Criminal Mind. And obviously, the case that had come up in my mind was the Jay Slater case. And I was just reading some articles and points on criminal minds. And some of the points that were brought up. How does a criminal mind work? So it goes, is rationalizing his or her heinous crimes and shifting the blame for his or her actions to his victims, regardless of crime. Most experts have distorted perception about the culpability and have developed some rationalization to ease their guilt to justify their criminal behavior. Very, very interesting stuff. So we look at Lucy first. She was the one that went to the police station and it said to Haley Comet that she'd done everything possible to help Jay out and basically made some noise in the early days that she was heard, that she'd done everything in her power to find Jay, and even went to the Airbnb when she didn't know really who it was. And this sort of more or less say rowdiness of making the world look, if to say, look, what have I done? It was very, very clever because it did catch people's imaginations and attention. This young woman putting something up on Facebook for Lena Patel, who answered her call. I believe she knew Lena Patel. So it was said in the early days that Lena Patel did make a statement, then retracted that statement if it was her. I believe her mum wasn't that far away, which was what going on. I'm just wondering whether Lucy had said something to her mum previous to Jay going missing, like even a couple of hours before. I think something's wrong, and I need you to be here, mum. I need you back up. It wouldn't surprise me whether her mum did go to the basically Airbnb, basically with her at one time to sort of confront basically Ayub and Rocky. It just wouldn't surprise me that actual scenario if it was basically Lucy's mum who was actually with her. But she's actually very smart at the end of the day because, like I said, she doesn't really tell us where she was at specific times, specific moments, because we've heard many stories for her. I went home early. That means I went to sleep and I didn't get up till the early hours of the morning. And then we hear Ayab's story about them all being at the strip and Lucy going to get something to eat and being on the beach as well. It's an absolutely joke that this wasn't flagged up by the coroner in so many of the different stories. I know maybe it's not his job. He's got to look at specific points. But surely he would have read that and think this doesn't add up. There's something seriously wrong there. And didn't Debbie see it? It seems like Debbie's forgotten what she said before because, like I said, she said, in the past that she trusts no one, so did Warren say that. But it's absolutely bizarre that Debbie and the family didn't actually question Lucy and said, look, we asked Lucy these questions because, look, as a parent, wouldn't you say, look, I've talked to Lucy, I've talked to Brandon, I've talked to Brad. It doesn't make sense. So basically, what she actually done was actually put out that her information was correct about Jay. And that's why she went, she was comfortable in talking to the national news as though, but she didn't want to show her face. And obviously they were using someone else's voice as well, which I found it was quite bizarre. And I think one of those reasons is that she didn't want to be known basically as out in Tenerife as basically a dealer, to be honest with you. Because like I said, I think a lot of people did come forward and said, look, I've seen her on the strip. She's been kicked out of that club. She does this, she does that. We've heard all that. That was always going to come out at the end of the day because you can't hide forever and people know where she was. And then obviously Facebook, TikTok, at the end of the day, she disassociated with herself that had, that had been involved in the Jay Slater case, like friends like Tom H and connections. That was really, really odd. And there was quite a few people who actually done that. But I think she's kind of clever in that she instigated that this was an accident from day one. But one of the main questions is, Mum asked, is why didn't she go to Jay? Basically, if they, his phone pinged and they knew where he was, technically on Jay's phone map, which actually didn't make sense to me. But like I said, this is why it's weird. This is why I say someone else had Jay's phone and was basically fiddling about it as though he was actually there, which is quite bizarre to me. But it can be done at the end of the day. And like I said, I think some people who hadn't looked at this case properly do actually think, wow, Jay had to be there because his phone. It doesn't work like that. If someone's got your phone and there's movement on it, 99% people actually think it was you and think it was you, that person, Jay. But like I said, when you look at this case and the state was that Jay was, and I believe that probably Lucy had his phone on that beach at that time, and it was used to actually set up as though Jay was still alive and up in Masca, which is quite bizarre. It was planned that if everyone keeps to the same story and cover up, and a few people paid off, like the Guardia Civil, CCTV, not really seen, even though we know that's out there, that would have tell us a lot more. Who, how did Jay leave? Did he get kicked out? And I'm not sure. Basically, he did kicked out. I think he just left. I think he just followed basically Lucy and Brandon out of there, and Brad as well. I truly believe that. So that's my thoughts on Lucy. And if we looked at, like I said, basically professional criminal Peter, like Peter Hyatt, who said that she's definitely hiding something, and she's not telling us the full truth. I truly believe that. Let me know what you think, people, but we're just going through some of the suspects. The thing about Brad Hargreaves, I think when things got on top and he realised Jay had gone and was probably, in the middle of the scenario, what was going on at the end of the day, what was actually happening for Jay, I think he got scared. And I don't think he really wanted to be a part of a situation where his friend was killed and he didn't suspect it, and realise if this comes on top and actually it is a criminal investigation, then he could probably be arrested for it. And I do believe he was nursing some injuries and probably had a fight with someone like Rocky or even Abe, because he didn't want to maybe do the walk that Jay did, or he didn't want to be involved in a cover-up just in case things come on top. I do think that, and I think that was one of the reasons why Warren was videoing, because like I said, he wasn't too sure basically what happened to Brad and what he knew. I don't think he has Jay's interest at heart, and I think he's scared. But I also think that, like I said, he could possibly be involved in the Tom Hilton side of things, sort of more friendly with him and camaraderie with Tom H as well as Lucy. I think this is a massive part, and I think I just got a feeling he was pretty jealous of Jay. I really do, because I think he possibly liked Lucy as well. But I think Lucy did like Jay, and that's why I think even though she was part of what happened to Jay, I do think she didn't want him to die. But things had got too far by then. This was the problem. But I think with Brad, because like I said, he told the truth from the start, I think he was forgiven by Debbie and Warren. This is what I think in the early days, because I don't think Brandon and Lucy told Debbie everything, and I think she had to sort of work that out for herself, what happened to son Jay. But I do think Debbie knows a hell of a lot more than what she's actually saying. But it seems like to me she's done a little bit of a 180 in talking to the news. But like I said, obviously this case is going to be a subject, because you're guaranteed somewhere along the line, people, I don't think we'll have to wait very long, these people will come back out. But like I said, I think a lot of them have disassociated their friendship and business, basically contacts at this present moment. I think because people know who they are. I do think Brad knows a lot more. I do think he's scared to say. I do think possibly that he'd been threatened, and I think that he knew technically what was going to happen to Jay, and I don't think he was a good friend to Jay's either. Even though I don't think he was completely directly involved with Jay's murder. We move on to Brandon Hodson, who is said to be a good friend of Jay Slater's. And I believe one of the reasons why Jay went out there is because of Brandon. But I think with Brandon and Lucy, they're tight at the end of the day. And I do think they're well into the Ruggs game. And I also believe that their probably parents know each other and they're tight and will protect each other to the end. I think with Jay, I think he was used and abused and thrown away by his friends personally, even though we know the ins and outs of this case. This is just my personal opinion of them. I think basically Brandon is very, very money orientated. I do think he's wrapped up with big time people, as his brother is as well. I do think he knows Ayub, but he didn't want to rat him out or say how he knows him and Rocky, to be honest with you, and also Potter Paper. I think that. We know that Brandon has been to Tenerife before, and he is well known on the strip there. And like I said, if it is believed that Jay owed him money, why would Jay go missing for £200? I think that the problems began back home, I think, and I think it led to Tenerife as well. Obviously, the basically Tom Hilton, what happened to him earlier on. I think that's a factor in that as well. I do think there was a lot going on that probably Debbie actually didn't know about, like I said, the young people squabbling out there. But what we do know is that I think Brandon and Lucy have been well trained, and their sort of mindset is criminal. It's just as simple as that, and it should be actually put out there. I don't think they're good people, because if they were good people, Lucy and Brandon and Brad would have got Jay out of there and got him to a police station or a flight back home as soon as possible. And they failed to do that. They failed to do that because they actually knew what was going to happen to him, or that something has been set up for him to be taken due to something they did and something they set up. It's as simple as that. We can't say anything. And for not coming out to the inquest, or even writing any information down on paper to send in the coroner's court, is absolutely despicable. Don't forget, the police went to his mum's house and it was all recorded, and left a summons there for him to attend court. Nothing. No email from his mum. Don't forget, in the early part of the case, she turned around and said that he is liaising with the police, which is quite bizarre. But you can tell, if it was him talking to MWT, he didn't want anything to do with the case or knowing anybody. It was just, I'm protecting myself, and I don't really give a shit what basically anyone else says. I'm out. And that is what I got from him. He wanted to be 1,000 miles away from the case, and him not being connected into what happened to Jay Slater. And like I said, I think he was one of the main perpetrators why Jay went. Some friend. And it makes you wonder why Debbie hasn't questioned him personally in why he didn't attend court and what really happened to Jay Slater. I don't think she's really had that conversation with him. It's all right saying Lucy did what, and did everything she did. She didn't, because she should have gone to him. She should have reported it to Debbie earlier, so Debbie could make plans and going out earlier to see what was actually happening. There were a lot of lies, and there was a lot of things that weren't added up. Why the friends and the last people to see Jay didn't actually go to him to support him, which is weird. That's my view on Brandon. Move on to a cuisine. Definitely when he first came out and he said, look, Jay came alive and he left alive, you know, shows me there, right there in the early days, that he's trying to tell us, look, I'm nothing to do with this case. He left. That's his problem. That's basically it. That's what he was telling us. There's no really sort of heartfelt apologies in what happened to him. It makes him wonder why Debbie Warren didn't actually call out Abe and Rocky and what they were saying, because I still think they've got a lot of questions for them, because this case is over now, basically, and is deemed as an accident by the coroner's court, by Dr. David Adderley. I understand that. I personally wouldn't have accepted that. I wouldn't have, even if it meant me going through walls to actually get the truth, then I would. It's just simple as that at the end of the day, especially when it's, you know, we believe that a lot of what we were told was lies, and a lot of this was foul play in what happened to Jay, which has been basically being thrown under the carpet. And a lot of people have questioned the governments, the police on both sides about this case, and why was there never a criminal investigations. So my view about Abe, I think it was Lucy, possibly Brandon as well, that phoned Abe to clean this mess up, whatever happened on the beach. And this is why I don't think Jay was actually supposed to die. I really, really don't. And it was a panic situation. And these were why the accident crew group were called in. Brad's mum made that Facebook group and set up the GoFundMe straight away. Why would you set up a GoFundMe when we didn't really know he was actually missing? And like I said, he could have been shacked up with a girl or ended up back at a party. No one knew he was missing. That was very, very odd. And that should be a massive, massive red flag there. The GoFundMe being set up when no one was really deemed missing at that time. That was pretty bizarre. The Facebook group, and obviously it was absolutely to control what was going on. I remember in the early days that basically I didn't know who basically Logie was, and he was a full subscriber on my channel, which was quite bizarre. So you'd be surprised how many people were sort of jumping into your DMs just to basically see what was actually happening, to be honest with you. But I think with Abe, I think he is quite high up in the game. He may not handle goods anymore, but I think he sure does basically has got his hand in some way of where the money goes from the rug trade. I truly, truly believe that. And I believe he was asked to clean this up at the end of the day, and due to his connections on the island. And I do think this is where Logie got involved, Chris Tenerife, and many others who were out there. I think that are career criminals as well. It was made to look like an accident due to what the people were saying, and that was the only narrative. And did you notice the accident group weren't even looking at anything else that possibly could have happened to him at the end of the day? And this is why and I think this is why it plays out of their minds, and this is why I think they jump into people's platforms to actually close them down. And because I think they're out there, and I do think that people are actually thinking, oh, hold on, this is all seems a bit shady and dodgy to me. I do think that is affecting their businesses to go out and do what they were doing before, because before they can get away with it. But now I think people are more in tuned into what goes on out of there, and young people being sort of trafficked to do things, especially if they're getting their passports taken as well. I do think it was the middleman, to be honest with you. I think he was the cleaner to go in and clean things up. I don't think he really gives a toss basically what people say about him, because like I said, he wasn't directly involved, but he does know what happened to Jay Slater, and it was said that obviously he knows basically a lot of people, and Tom Hilton supposedly knows Tom Hilton's father and was in prison with him. So there are major connections there, and I do think that basically Lucy knows basically the big players out there like Potter Paper, Abe, and connections there, and also Jonathan T as well. I do, Jonathan A. Sorry, excuse me. Yeah, I do think that as well. I do think everyone's interconnected and knows each other for a reason. So for me, Abe was the middleman. I think he's a very good liar. I think he was basically protecting. Everyone seemed to be protecting Brandon, but I don't think he was protecting Lucy as much, especially when he realised that picture was taken by her to make out to to make him sort of be involved, and maybe that is what she showed MWT, that MWT had a picture of him of driving him back to Masca. Let me know your thoughts, people. But like I said, Criminal Minds, how they work, very, very interesting. And but do you know one thing I have learned? Not one of them wants to take responsibility for anything. Don't forget to subscribe to Streamline Entertainment and follow the channel. Thank you.